see. It is. Can everybody hear me? Hi, Angela and Jean and my mom. Of course, this a few expletives gimbal only works every other time. So sorry, I'm a little late. I could not get it to work and it's still not working. So I'm just kind of holding it. So this is things get away, I swear the death of me. But we will go ahead and get started here. It's like we're probably waiting for a few more people, but we'll just go ahead and get started since I'm starting about 5 minutes late. So today is May 14th. Happy Mother's Day to everyone and my own mother that's watching. Did you notice I was wearing your scarf? Anyway, today on May 14th, 1610, so 413 years ago today, Henri IV, Henry IV, King of France, was murdered here in Paris, not very far from where we are. I, of course, am in the backside of the office, the Louvre. So this is the Cour Carré. And I started here, not just because it's the Louvre and I love it, but because this is where he left from. So the Louvre looked very different at that time. Basically, what is here of the Louvre is you see the pavilion right there, the pavilion horloge. This whole back area is the Sully wing, which that name comes into play here in a little bit. But it was basically from right there, without me pointing here, from right here over is of the Louvre that we see today was standing at this point in 1610. And so he had left the Louvre and he cruised out here in his carriage. He was on his way to the Arsenal, which is the area just right across on the right bank from the end of the Ile Saint Louis, and he was going over there to see his friend Maximilien du Sully, who they were very old friends, and this whole wing is named after him. And this wing here, the Sully, as I mentioned, the second floor all the way around there is all French paintings. It's one of my favorite parts of the Louvre, and where I took two people today. They gave me a list of 65 things in the Louvre to see, and we cruised around this whole entire second floor in about 45 minutes to find the things that were on the list. I'll walk behind this music so you could hear it for a second. The acoustics in there under the pavilions is always amazing acoustics in there. But it is gorgeous. This morning it was kind of chilly, but today now and this week is supposed to be in the 60s and hopefully sunny. So we're gonna walk out here. I'm gonna cross the street. This is the Rue de Rivoli here. We are normally you could see back a little bit in towards the Louvre there, but they're doing construction work right here. And the Rue de Rivoli now is closed to traffic. So the only cars you see on here now are if they are taxis or delivery or buses. And there's lots and lots of bikes. I'm not sure this white car, I think he's not supposed to be there. Citizens arrest. So we're going to go over here. We're going to go down this Rue Saint-Honoré over to the spot where Henri died. But this is the backside. We've actually, I think I've done this before. for the tour. But this is the backside. This is the Oratoire de Louvre church. It's now a Protestant church. But you have this gentleman here, Gaspard de Coligny, this statue. It's kind of a little blurry, but he was a really important member underneath and was involved. He came up through into the St. Bartholomew Day massacre, which is what he was actually killed that day. He was there was attempted assassination of him a few weeks ago. He did not die. So on that August 24th, he was killed 1572. And that was also an important moment in the life of Henry IV. I love that this is back here because the St. Bartholomew Day massacre, it was when he was going to be married to his wife, Marguerite de Valois, who was the daughter of Catherine de Medici. Catherine de Medici agreed to the wedding, even though Henry IV, or he was actually known as Henry III of Navarre at the time, his mother, Jeanne d'Albert, was the head of the Protestants, the Huguenots. And Catherine, in her evil ways, said, I will okay their wedding, but it has to take place by August 18th, 1572 in Paris. And really, the reason was because they wanted to get all the Protestants here in Paris. And on August 24th, 1572, at midnight, the bells of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois, which is just across the other side of the Louvre, rang. And that meant, oh, wait a second, you guys. Let's see, this is never open. I don't know if it'll be okay to go in, but I'll try. Maybe it's not actually all the way open. And if there's a service, oh, no, he's definitely closing it. But I have tried so many times to get into this church. The one Sunday, I pretended I was going to church and I went. And I finally got inside, and the whole entire thing was covered in scaffolding. So I could see nothing inside there. But, so back to the killing. They ended up pulling the Protestants out of their beds, going into the hotels they were staying at in the homes, and pulled them from the beds, killed them, threw them in the street, threw them in the Seine. They say that the Seine was running red that day. Look at this cute little place. Look at that cute little toile dress. I like that little red dress too. But they say the Seine ran red that day because of all of the blood, which is pretty horrible. But that's Catherine de Medici. Henry IV will go on to remarry again, this time to Marie de Medici. And if you're keeping track, they were distant cousins. And it does get confusing because you have Catherine de Medici married Henry II, Marie de Medici married Henry IV. So we are on Rue Saint-Honoré. Rue Saint-Honoré may be one of the best chefs, or saints, I should say, because he is a patron saint of bakers. And this week on the 16th is Saint Honoré Day, his feast day. So wherever you are, if you can, go to your French bakery and get a Saint Honoré and enjoy that. Mom, go to the boulangerie Saint Honoré in Paris on Thurman and go get one. They are one of my favorites. My tradition used to be that every night, look at those beauties. Every night on the last night in Paris when I was packing, I would go and get one of those and eat one while I packed, finishing up whatever wine I had. So number 115, I don't know if Chrissy's here, but this pharmacy right here has been a pharmacy for a very, very long time. It was a pharmacy all the way back in the 18th century, because here is where Axel van Fersen, came to this pharmacy and bought his ink, his special ink to write the letters to Marie Antoinette, the secret love letters. It was almost disappearing ink. What does this thing here say? It says, oh yeah, King Louis the 15th, 16th. Do we see Axel's name on here? Marie Antoinette, Queen Marie Antoinette, incarcerated in the prison of the Temple. Mm-hmm. But how cool is that it's still a pharmacy? I love that. And this right here. So Henri would have gone right down the street. There's some more gruesome happenings right here. This little fountain right here. I love this little street name, the Rue de l'Arbre Sec, the street of the dried tree. But this right here is the Croix de Traoré. I always get that wrong. And this was first originally created and done by Jean Goujon, and it was done under Francois Premier. Jean Goujon is the one that did the amazing caryatides that are in the Louvre, and then it was redone under Soufflot, who is also the same architect that did the Pantheon. So it was done under Soufflot, under Louis the 15th. It's funny that the plaque on here says Louis the 16th there, but it's here on the corner. And for a while, it was actually kind of like for artists, like it was a space for squatters. Oh, look at the kitty cat. Hi. Hi, kitty. Oh, do you see us? But I love this little, look at and it's in Latin. But it has the Bourbon fleur de lis there on the building. But right here in the middle of the street, is where they tortured people and burned them alive. Years and years ago, uh, this friend of mine was here, and look at that lovely little cool piece. She was here, and she posted about something in Montmartre, and somebody commented and said, "Oh yeah, but that's where a horrible massacre happened." I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty much all of Paris. Not many corners in Paris that you can't say somebody was massacred, but there's a long history. It wasn't last week." So we are heading towards Les Halles. And it's Sunday, so it's kind of quiet. A lot of stores around here are closed, but it is so gorgeous out right now. I hope you guys are having a lovely Sunday morning and the weather's good. I know that in Portland, it's in like the 90s for days on end. It does not usually get that hot, and normally you can't even call it summer until after the 4th of July. It's usually not warm. Great little market there. So here is Saint Eustache, the gorgeous Saint Eustache, a men's church. Not as big as Saint Sulpice, but it looks, because it sits in the middle of the park. Oh, look at these things. It sits in the middle of that park. Hey, Mom, that looks like ones that we have. Those look exactly like it. Um, but it sits in the middle of the street, and Saint Sulpice sits in the middle of the city. So you don't really get the scope of the size of it as well. It's not Honoré. The street itself is quite long. It does turn into the Faubourg Saint Honoré. This little, this was the street that they would take to go up to Saint Denis. So the day before, on May 13th, 1610, Marie de Medici was finally coronated as queen up at the Basilique Saint Denis, which is where the queens were coronated. The kings were coronated in Reims, in Champagne, and the queens in Saint Denis. But Henry IV was not coronated up there because he was coronated in the church in Chartres because he still wasn't Catholic. So he was still Protestant, but later the love of his life, Gabrielle d'Estrées, convinced him to become Catholic because it would help end the wars of religion. And his very famous quote was, "Paris is worth a mass." He also said that every home would have a chicken in its pot. So there's the poulet pot, and that is kind of attributed to him. So we are around here. If you take the metro in Paris, you know Châtelet. Châtelet is a nightmare, and most people avoid it at all costs. But it is very difficult to avoid because it is a huge intersection of metro lines that come through Paris. I avoid it at all costs because it is huge and difficult to figure out. I pretty much avoid the metro anyway because I just walk every place. But like, what a lovely day it is. Everybody's out on a terrace. So this Rue Saint Honoré just ended, and we're coming on to this little street here, which is exactly how Henri would have gone. So this is, we'll go through here. So this is the Rue des Innocents, the street we're going to go to though. He went, but I wanted to show you the statue or the fountain, which is getting ready to go under a huge restoration. It's already got kind of a little wall all the way around it. And we have done one all about that a while ago. We did it with Kate. And that fountain used to actually be against a wall. So it was only three sides. And you can see it through here. Right there. Look at how beautiful the trees are. So this street here is the Rue de la Ferronnière, which is the street of the iron workers. And it was here on this street, and I'll show you up above here, but this is not the exact spot. Hopefully there's nobody standing where he was. So up here, when they redid this building here, the owner of the building put that, so it says here, Henry IV, the King Henry IV, was assassinated by Ravaillac on the 14th of May, 1610, so today. And he came down here. It was a very, very narrow street then. Now cars don't come up here except for delivery. And he got stopped. His carriage got stopped behind two different trucks carrying. One was carrying hay, the other one was carrying wine, and they got stopped. And a gentleman named Francois Ravaillac jumped up onto the carriage. He had taken a knife earlier that day from a cafe, and he stuck the knife in between the second and third rib cage, his ribs, and killed him. And so here is where it happened, right here on the spot. And this crest is the crest of Henry, because on the left it represents the fleur de lis, which is of the French, and then the right is the chains, which represent Navarre. And Navarre, he was Henry III, King of Navarre. When Henry III of France died, it ended up coming over to Henry, and he became Henry IV. He was the first of the Bourbon kings. So from there, we have the descendants of, you go to Louis the 14th, Louis the 15th, Louis the 16th, all of those guys, Louis the 13th. And so here it was, right here on this exact spot is where Henry the Fourth was killed. I really like Henry. He is quite the character. Some of my favorite paintings, one of my favorite paintings in the Louvre is of him. And I just showed people today, always talking about his legs under his, what looks like his kicky little bluish silver satin shorts. And here they have, let's see, what's this? Read the hair on here. So here is a reenactment. Here is a historical reenactment of Ravaillac jumping in there. Doesn't look like he jumped. It looks like he just, but he did actually jump. He stepped on the wagon wheel once, then twice, and then right on in there. And Henri, he died pretty quickly. He was taken back towards the Louvre. He was taken to the Louvre. And on the way, they stopped at a pharmacy. It's no longer there. And they tried to help him, but it was too late. He was had already died. And then we're going to end today where Louis the 13th was, who was his son. Look at that lovely little piece up here. I got to go back and see those plates that look just like ones that my grandma had. We're going to cross over to back to Rue de Rivoli, and then down and over to the left bank. It's a Metallica pop-up store. If you need anything, I should tell Willie, and what Willie loves. Willie the Pompier does love Metallica. But this little sweet little street is the Rue des Déchargés, and that means it is the unloaders. So it's a street of the unloaders because we are just right there. We were right there on the edge of Leal. And Leal, as you know, was the big market. So it was the belly of Paris, is what Emile Zola called it. And it is where all of the markets, everybody would go there to get their food. Now it's outside of Paris, Rougy, and you can go out there. You go out there on tours if you go very early in the morning. So this building here, 59 Rue de Rivoli, is a whole building is filled with artists, and you could just walk right in there anytime you want and walk around. Could head down here, and I'll take you right by the Samaritan, and we're gonna go over Pont Neuf because that's where Henry lives. Well, his statue lives. Here's Samaritan. Maybe I can jaywalk across that. Oh, well, you have the IKEA up here, which everybody that lives in Paris knows where the IKEA is. It's a great place to come get any of those kinds of things you need. Down there, that is the Hotel de Ville all the way down there. You have the Tour Saint Jacques, which is all that's left of the former church that was there. And this is mostly all bikes. Look at this direction. And it is in the morning, if you try coming down here and crossing the Rue de Rivoli, even all the way down by the Louvre, you're really taking your life in your hands. Uniqlo, Uniqlo however everybody says it. They have the old Louvre director signed a deal with them many years ago. So twice a year comes out with this collab with the Louvre, and the newest one just came out. It's all a little odd, but it has some of the pieces are actually in the Louvre. So if I did want it, I got my big 5% membership discount. Really is paying for itself. We have Zara here as well. We have a little setup here. We're gonna head down here because the statue is still here of the Irish Kitsima who did the dots on the last campaign on the purses. She's holding a purse. But this is a Louis Vuitton store that just opened not that long ago, maybe before Christmas. And it also has a cafe and has what is like a little, a kind of a museum. It's called the LV Dream. It's a bit of a museum, but there's a cafe there, and you could go in there and get special pastries that have the Louis Vuitton emblem on it. People get very excited. But she's been here for quite some time now. She's been here since I think February, since before Fashion Week. She's still here. So the one that was on the building, the Louis Vuitton building on the Champs-Élysées came down a while ago. But she's still here. I don't imagine she's going to always be here. But it's kind of cool. We got Samaritan right behind, which is a gorgeous store that was redone and just reopened a little over a year ago. And up above that is this Cheval Blanc Hotel, which is very, very expensive. Starts at about 2,000 euros a night. But they have a restaurant up there called Le Tout Paris, and you could go on up there and have a very expensive glass of wine or cocktail and overlook. This is that the view you have is of the entire left bank. It's gorgeous. Look at how neat this is. How fun is that? After Virgil, the menswear designer, died a few years ago, the whole outside of this kind of became a little memorial to him. That is the Place Vendôme store. This is the original store that's just outside of Paris, where they sometimes, every once in a while, you could go inside of it. That actually is a museum. It's not open to the public very often. But then look at, yeah, that is very serious dudes. Serious dudes dressed in black. I thought that was a Jack Russell for a second because my little bestie, Angus, that I stayed with in Houston for what felt like forever, is moving to France this week, and I get to see him on Thursday, and I cannot wait. He's not the best behaved dog out in public, so we shall see how this happens, but nevertheless, I am pretty excited to see him. We'll just meander. We'll making our own rules here. Here's the Pont Neuf. As you know, means the new bridge, but it's actually the oldest bridge in Paris. It also was the site of the first sidewalks other than Rue de l'Odéon. Those were the very first actual sidewalks. And then when the Pont Neuf opened, oh, and I should have mentioned, I forgot. So when I showed you that fountain that was dedicated on the outside to Louis XVI, it was originally a pump house. And the pump house pulled the water from here. So right here at this point of the bridge, there was a pump house built, and it was called the Samaritan because on the top of it, it had a bas relief of the Samaritan from the Bible, and it was the woman that was getting water. And so that is why the store here is called the Samaritan, because Ernest Cognier, he had a little stall right here in this very first stall, and he sold red hats and gloves that were woven, knitted. And so he sold those here, and he was really actually very successful. Decided to open a store. So he started the first Samaritan, and then slowly he bought all the buildings around there. And you can see this building here that we're looking at. The one in the center was once Samaritan. And then the building just past her, right there, also a Samaritan. And this building at one point was Samaritan. So he had this immense amount of area. One of the very first mass apartments where you could get, if you couldn't find the Samaritan, you didn't need it. That and the Bon Marché over on the left bank. And then, of course, you have BHV, which is the Bazaar Hotel de Ville. Get that great little market. I think that's my friend Byron's favorite coffee place. But that pump house pulled the water from here and got the water to that whole area. It's so you tell the weather's nice because you see everybody lining up. And when we started, I don't know if you noticed, we passed a couple people. They looked like they had some Corona beers and some bags of chips. They were definitely heading down here to the banks of the Seine because nothing is better on a lovely evening with the sun setting, sitting down there with some rosé. Like it is, it's toasty. So we're gonna go over here because there's my buddy Henri. So this was the first originally built. Marie de Medici wanted this built, have one created, dedicated to her husband. She contacted her uncle back in Florence because there was a statue of Cosimo the First de Medici that is there in Florence. That's right outside of one of the museums where there's the outside smaller version of Michelangelo's David. So she said she wanted to have one made. So they ended up finally getting it done. And it was then sent up on its way here in 1605. It was originally created. In 1611, it was on its way here to France. And it was on a boat. And the boat sank off the coast. And it was underground for a few years before they finally were able to pull it up. And then it finally made it up here to Paris and was inaugurated. And this is really weird, August 24th, which is the date of the St. Bartholomew Day Massacre. Then, on again, August 24th, 1792, poor old Vergolan up there, Henri IV, was torn down and they melted him down and destroyed him because it was a revolution. And then when Louis XVIII was in power later on, in 1818, guess which day they inaugurated him? That's right, August 24th. I'm sure they did this all on purpose, but it's a little strange that it also inaugurates the day of the St. Bartholomew Day Massacre, which was right over there, is where they started killing everybody, just right outside the Louvre, because that right there, where you see those two towers, that is of Saint Germain l'Auxerrois. One is the one on the left, is the tower that's attached to the mayor's office, and then the one on the right is the bell tower of Saint Germain l'Auxerrois. And here's a great view. You can see all those great mascarons here. They say that some of these were of the ministers that disagreed with the building of the Pont Neuf. So the architect and designers made them into those evil faces. Most of those, everything has been redone since the original bridge was done in 1607. It was finished under Henry IV. It was started under Henry III, but then Henry IV was the one who actually finished it. And so that's also kind of partially why he's here. And then when you go and look across the way, he looks into Place Dauphine. Place Dauphine is named after the Dauphin, so Louis XIII. It's called Dauphine, which is the feminine version of it because Place is feminine. I had to ask my French teacher that many years ago because I was like, well, why is it called Dauphine? But the word Place is feminine, so this is the beauty and the frustration of the French language. So Henri up there, when he was recreated and added back there in 1818, it was done by Francois Lemont. This was the very first equestrian statue that was placed in France that was placed into a public space. Before that, you had the statue of Louis XIII that's in the middle of Place des Vosges, but this is the first one that was in a public, and I love Henri. And it is actually really amazing because if you go to the Carnival leg, you can see pieces of the original one. So the horse's front left leg, and then the right hand of Henri, and some other pieces of it, his shoe, and you could see into it. And so it's done just like the statues on the top of Notre Dame. It's not completely solid bronze because that would be insanely heavy. They never would have pulled that up from the bottom of the sea. But it's kind of done around a metal structure, and then they lay the sheets on it and form it around there. But Henri always has, I love his face. He always has this very pointy chin with his beard, and he always kind of has this kind of goofy look on his face. He was known as a Vert Galant, which basically means that he was quite the ladies' man. And the park down here is the park, the Vert Galant. I'll show you down here. When it floods in Paris, the end of the park kind of disappears. But right now, it is filled with that humongous chestnut trees and people sitting down here enjoying this lovely Sunday afternoon. You will never find me sitting in the grass because I've seen the rats way too many times running around those grasses. This is where you could also get some of the bateau mouche. Most of them are down closer to the Eiffel Tower. I tell my clients this is a great place to get them because it's centrally in the city. And you could go from here and come back, especially if you're staying around Saint-Germain or this area. But a couple years ago, when the water got very, very high in 2018, it actually completely came up here and covered all of the grass. But they've been working on all this. So this used to also have the kind of the metal around here. And so the ding dongs were sticking their stupid love locks on here. But just like the Pont des Arts, they replaced it with these panels. So people can't do that. That right there, best boat on the water, the Pompier boat. Looks like they're probably all in there. Maybe have an apero. Well, probably not apero, but I do know for a fact sometimes the firemen are partying away the night. I know this firsthand. So here's Henri. Rest in peace, Henri. We should have brought a wreath of flowers to lay at old Henri's feet today. 413 years ago. Can you even imagine that? I mean, that's older than the United States. So we're gonna head over here. We're gonna go just over here to the Rue des Grands Augustins. And that is where, look at how beautiful that is. It is just too nice. I need to go home and get back on my computer, but I just want to go and sit someplace outside. But everybody else has that idea too. I have the next few weeks are bonkers, crazy, until I get to mid-June, and then I have a tiny bit of a break as of now. Here's this side. So we're on the end of Ile de la Cité. Technically, where we are right now is where Ile de la Cité once ended. The part here on the right, where the Parc of the Vert Galant is, That was another little island that it was kind of put together right here underneath where the Pont Neuf is. So, and the Pont Neuf stretches from side to side. It's the third longest bridge in Paris, too. The other two are kind of at the very edge of the city of Paris. One's called the downstream bridge and one's called the upstream bridge. This building, I was obsessed with this building a very long time ago because at the very top of it are bas reliefs, and the guy on the left is holding Notre Dame. It's not that old of a building, actually. It was just built in the early 20th century. And there's not a lot of information, but I should try looking again because sometimes, and I do need to go to the History of Paris Museum because they could help me with a lot of that stuff. Here we have so all the fountains are on now. The Wallace fountains have been turned on. So we'll get across here. There was a big strike on May 1st, and the next one they've called for is June 6th, but they're losing steam because the law has passed. There's not much they could do. And this will be week 16 or day 16, the next strike. So that's 3 weeks of work that if people have participated in every strike, that's 3 weeks of work they're not getting paid for. So if you're coming to Paris this summer and you see that there is a strike, don't worry too much about it because even the metro is running, and it's less and less. It'll say 3 out of 4 trains are running, so only maybe one of them is not. So just plan ahead. Know that they might be packed with people. Look at that beautiful store. Look at how the paint is gorgeous. Um, and just stay on your feet. Just walk. So right when look at that railing. Oh my gosh. I don't think I ever see actually anything in that store. It's been like that for quite some time. You could sometimes actually find really great scarves. I just was telling my clients today that were looking for gifts. Sometimes those little shops actually have some really great scarves. Yeah, Angela. Yeah, you just avoid it. You know exactly where they're going to be. They wanted to, the black box. So the black box is a very, very right wing neo Nazi group that travel all over Europe. And when they have these protests, and then they get into these protests and they wreak havoc, they're the ones that cause all the problems. And, they throw things at the police and light things on fire. So pretty much it's those guys. And they wanted to yesterday have 5 separate demonstrations in Paris. And the prefecture, the police department actually said, nope, you're not going to do this. And the police were out everywhere yesterday. And as far as I know, none of that happened. Oh, this restaurant keeps changing. It was a Lampersard, I think, for a while. So this restaurant, La Perot, is a very famous restaurant. It's where the courtesans and mistresses used to come. And if you go upstairs, they have little private dining rooms. And the mirrors that are in there are all scratched up because these women would be given diamond rings. And they test them on the windows to make sure they scratched the window to make sure they were real diamonds, as one should. But it was kind of lost its luster. And then Lenny Kravitz is a part owner in it, and it was closed for a while, and they redid it. And now it's, especially during Fashion Week, it is the place to be. And when Lenny Kravitz's daughter Zoe got married a few years ago, they had the parties there. But this street here is the Rue des Grands Augustins, and it is named because it was an abbey that was here, and the quay that goes right outside it is also the Quai des Grands Augustins. It had one very, very famous residence up here, right up here on the left. The building right next to me is where Robert and Sonia Duloni lived here, and Guillaume Apollinaire lived here for a very short period of time. Sonia Duloni, we did a podcast episode about her. She was born in what is now Ukraine, and she was an amazing artist. The reason I came here today, where we're ending, is because this right here is called the Relais Louis XIII, Louis the 13th, because this is where he was, and not exactly this building. So this area right here was the convent and the abbey, but it was also the location for the Order of the Knights of the Holy Spirit. And this is where Louis the 13th was when his father was killed. He was about 8.5 years old, and he had been over here. So as soon as his father died, of course, they had to race over here and get him because now he is next in line to the throne. And so he was here, and this is where they got him. And they say that he was told and given the oath. So here it says, here the young Louis the 13th was found the hour after the death of his father, Henri IV. This is actually a pretty fancy restaurant. I have not been in there yet, but I booked it there. I booked it for some clients. But this building right here is where Picasso lived. So Picasso lived in that building. And when Henry IV died, Henry IV was actually a very